Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Enemy of the World by David Whittaker, directed by Barry Letts. Now, before I even begin with this story, there's just something I want to point out first. With this story, they didn't have a actual composer. Instead, using stock music is when the BBC use like a library of music that they've stored over the years, like basically like a cheap list of music and a library that they use. However, for this story, they decided to just use stock music from one composer, Bela Bartok. And the thing about Bela Bartok's music is not only that it's absolutely fantastic, and it really gives this story a cinematic edge. I mean, this story really feels like it should have been released in cinemas. But the important thing is, for this video anyway, is that the copyright on every of Bela Bartok's music has since left copyright and is now in the public domain, which means now I can play it. Hey, that's cool, isn't it? So, that should put something in the background for us. So a bit of backstory about the story. Back when it was first released in 1967, it was actually critically panned by most of its audience, saying that it's a bit dull and boring, and where's the monsters and aliens? This is also the only story of season 5 that was not a story in the bus formula. Instead, this is like a James Bond espionage kind of story. And what happens here is that when the BBC were scrapping all of their stories, this was sadly one of them. And because we only had the audio, a lot of people just overlooked this story as just that one with no monsters, and is the one where Patrick Troughton plays two characters. However, every episode was found in 2013, I think it was. So we can actually watch every episode. And when it was also found with the next story, The Web of Fear, and that one had a big critical reputation to it as being one of the better stories. So when these two stories came out, again back in 2013, a lot of people thought this one would just be swept under the rug, whilst The Web of Fear would be this mind-blowing event. However, when they screened this, because they for the big announcement, they put it like in a theatre for a bit, for the FBI film, British something. And when they showed this after 45 years of it being missing, the audience were blown away by its cinematography, by its writing, by its acting. Just overall, it was a fantastic 6-part adventure that everybody just couldn't stop praising since it was founded back in 2013. And I am one of those people. I can't praise this story enough. For 6 parts, it flies by, and the fact that it's not a bus formula, instead taking this like espionage James Bond. That's like the big word that you should be thinking about as a story, James Bond. Something about the look of it. Barry Letts directing this story, which is his first story. He would later go on to be the producer of the 70s series. Don't know if I mentioned this, but this is also Ina Lloyd's last story that he produced. So that's a fun fact. But back to the image quality. The directing in it, the types of shots they use, the close-ups, the timing of the editing, makes it feel like that this was released in cinemas. And the fact that this was released on the BBC TV show back in the 60s is mind-boggling. I mean, I can't put it to word. The story has a lot of scope as well. Just scope and cinematic, espionage, James Bond. These are the words that we're looking at here. So, what actually happens? The Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria land in the distant year of 2018. Because I remember those days when one of the biggest leaders in the world is somebody that looks like the Doctor. But anyway, when they're there, they land on this beach, and the beach looks, because they used location footage of a beach, the Doctor's standing on this like vast, empty beach void with only something like really far in the distance, which is like this hovercraft. Really puts it's only like simple things, but it really sets off that this story does not feel like it's in a cramped studio all the time. And even when it does, it still feels like it's expanding. And anyway, these guys, they recognize the Doctor and they plan to just kill him, just take him down. And we learn on later on through the story that they mistake him for this guy called Salamander. So what happens with Salamander is that he predicts natural disasters like earthquakes and volcanoes and stuff to the T, and people basically theorize that he's the one who's causing it. And this guy, he had evidence to suggest that he was basically not the cause of this, to try and gain power, to become one of the world's biggest dictators. But he was discredited by Salamander. And so you've got this espionage thing as they make the Doctor pretend to be Salamander. And it's very well paced, because you've got these bits where we have our characters watch a video of Salamander, which is just brilliant, because usually, because of the cheap budget and stuff, you don't get like this sort of visual cue. Usually around this time you would have somebody just explaining everything about Salamander with this big huge dialogue and stuff. But here they had like a big screen, which say like the size of my wall, say, and they had shots of Patrick Troughton as Salamander giving a massive speech, and then they used stock footage of politicians and like earthquakes and natural disasters, but it never feels like you're watching stock footage. It genuinely feels like you're watching Doctor Who still, and that's probably because of the way it's shot, and you have the Doctor and our characters in the frame, and then you've got the video in the background showing the stock footage. So these bits that might make it look cheap by using stock footage and having images that the production team would not have had, actually comes off as if like they've spent a lot of money onto this. I don't know if they actually spend a lot of money on it, but maybe they did. Who knows? I don't know if stock images are expensive, but there you go. And what happens then is they basically explain to the Doctor they want him to impersonate to try and get evidence against him. Because the Doctor, at this moment, he's not quite sure, because Salamander, he says all these good things, that he wants to protect the world from all of these natural disasters, and also as well, he makes crops and stuff. But this guy basically tells him that he's causing these problems, and so what he does is he calls up one of Salamander's like bodyguards to come into his house, and so the Doctor has to kind of rush and do an impression of him, which really puts a massive amount of tension into it. In fact, that's our first cliffhanger of the Doctor going into a room so he can make himself look like Salamander more with his hair parted and the clothes and stuff. And this bodyguard comes in and he opens the door, and then the Doctor, pretending to be Salamander, walks out, and then you got our cliffhanger. So, and you're just waiting there, it's like, oh my god, at any moment this guy is going to discover that this is the Doctor. At this moment in the story, we don't know anything about Salamander apart from his accent, but we know as an audience member, the Doctor a lot, and the Doctor's in the same situation. He doesn't know who Salamander is. He doesn't know how he talks. So it's like literally any moment he could give himself away. And it's just incredibly made. And so we have the second in command character, this bodyguard character. Now I really, there's another, one of the greatest aspects about Enemy of the World is its side villains. You have like 3 side villains at the moment. You have the bodyguard, we'll get into the 2 later on, and it really keeps the story interesting. You're not focusing on one character, one like race, a group of people. These different characters, and they've all got their own style of being a villain. For example, this guy, he's like a military guy. He's fronted. He's like, stand up straight, and do as you're told. But he's not really like a bad guy. He's just like misinformed because he thinks Salamander is this genius, and so he'll at any moment you just feel the tension that he's going to get away because he's this like military guy who can figure out anything, and so and then we get this plan of before getting anything, they get Jamie and Victoria to basically sabotage Salamander's house in probably one of the coolest scenes. They basically staged that there was a bomb in his house, and you see Salamander, he's talking to these guys, and you can see when Salamander's on screen, Pat Troughton really owns the screen. There's just something about his performance here. He's got that really thick accent, and it might be a little off-putting, but Patrick Troughton really sells it, and you genuinely believe that these are 2 different characters. And he's just so charming as well as evil as he persuades people to do his bidding, basically, and as he blackmails this guy, which is our second villain, who he attempts to try and poison another guy. And what happens then is that whilst they're talking, Jamie comes in, takes down one of Salamander's bodyguards, takes a radio, throws it out, and because they staged it, it blows up in the distance. And then Jamie explains that he was actually protecting Salamander. He was actually upset, and he heard about this bomb, and so he was going to save him. And then Salamander, who's this like really old-fashioned like trust. He likes loyalty and trust. Then hires him to be one of his like bodyguards, and the way that scene is shot and directed and acted by Fraser Hines, just like it's very action packed. There's a bit when after he throws it, he kind of like leans on the wall, puts his arms on like that, and he puts one of his feet up. So it's like a very cocky Jamie McCrinnick here. Reminds me a lot of like I don't know, like a sweet talker kind of character, and it really suits. However, Victoria is a bit less confident, and she might give the game away, which puts a lot of tension in scenes. However, I think it is a problem how Victoria is always in the weakest companion role, and all of these. So far, there hasn't been a story where she is taking the front. She is taking the front of it. She does get a bit to do in this story, and it's a lot better than she has been written before in this series. For example, she befriends this girl, Salamander's taste, and she finds out that she actually hates him as well, and so they team up to try and take down Salamander. And yeah, so she does get a lot to do. Also, she gets in these scenes as well, you've got Victoria working in the kitchens, and there's a chef character who is absolutely hilarious. He's only in like 2 episodes, and he's a very small role, but my god, what this story does very well, which is very strange for Doctor Who around this time is that this story has some very good side characters. Usually, as you might have noticed through these videos, I've been praising our main characters and the main plot with our heroes and villains, but it's always, the ones that always hit the weak spot is the side characters. And that's fair enough because, you know, this is a show where you only have a small amount of regulars, and so you're not going to have a lot of time to write interest in side characters. But here, there's just something about them. They don't have like big like story arcs or anything about them, but you remember them. You can clearly see, like you'll remember like the chef character. Like he's such a miserable git. I love him. There's a great bit where he's tasting the food and he's like, it's gonna be dreadful. They might put me to death. No, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't waste their bullets. Well. And there's a bit where Jamie comes in and he's like, it's a bit crowded in this kitchen. And Jamie's like, I'll leave. And he's like, no, you stay, I'll leave. I'm only the chef, and this is my kitchen. But yeah, so these side characters, there's something about them, like the girl and the man that they befriend earlier on in the story. They are just memorable characters. As you've got this basically female James Bond character. And yes, we've got a very strong, independent female character, finally. And then you've got this other guy who is hell-bent on taking down Salamander. And they don't say it straight off, you can tell it's something personal. I mean, he does get discredited by Salamander, but there's something in the performance, you can see there's something more to it than just what meets the eye, which plays a big part later on in the story. But anyway, so yeah, let's get back into the thing. So Salamander basically gets this other character who's a very weak character. He's not like full of himself, and he's always like nervous and stuff. And Salamander basically makes up lies and threatens to blackmail him basically, and it really, in a very badass sort of way, how he's like, no, this is not blackmail, this is insurance for just in case. And he basically, what he does is that this guy, he's like the country that they're in is run by this guy who didn't listen to Salamander, and so what he wants is to have this other guy that he can manipulate basically to take over. And what he does is he gets this guy who he can manipulate to basically try and poison him. So he's like our third villain. And like I said, you remember these characters. This guy, he's really, the tension comes from him. Is he going to do it? Is he not? Because you could tell, he's a good guy. He doesn't want to be there. He's been blackmailed by Salamander. But as well, you can see he's kind of desperate, and Salamander puts him in these awkward positions, and he ends up then not actually poisoning the guy. And then Salamander is like, don't worry, you don't kill him now, don't worry about it. There's plenty of other things you could do. And then he puts the poison in his drink and kills him, which is a very cool scene. So Salamander is a fantastic villain, and it's kind of strange how this was the only story TV-wise. They should have brought him back for season 6, I think. Maybe they should have even had him maybe in the War Games as well. Very, very interesting, because he's technically not dead, because he appears later on in comic books and novels. So, and then you've got our third henchman villain character who works for Salamander, Beacon, who is basically Salamander's assistant, who serves him in all of his daily routines. And I absolutely love this character. With the first one, you've got like the military type who basically knows how to take orders. You've got then the guy who takes who's been blackmailed and is being manipulated forcefully. And then you've got this character who is just an utter dick. There's a fantastic moment where him and his guards are trying to track down the guy that used to work with Salamander, the guy that who's helping the Doctor to try and get evidence against him. And they basically discover the file that Salamander was using to blackmail that guy, which is evidence that he's a villain. From that, the girl, the chef, his taster, who's betrayed him at the moment in time, and she gets shot dead, and then Beck, and he comes in, and this guy goes, she's dead, and he goes, good. And he's such. He is in it just to be the one on top, basically. I might have suggested that maybe if Salamander would have kept going, he would have betrayed him and tried and take over his mantle and become like the ruler of the world, because he is a proper villain. And the actor who plays him, he's just a smug bastard. I love it. His shit-eating grin and the way he just constantly plays off everybody is brilliant. And he's one of the first people who realise the general guy. He's the first one to discover that the Doctor is not Salamander, but he's like 50-50, because there's a scene where the Doctor basically hands him back his gun, and he's like, right, I'll help you find evidence, but if there's no evidence, then I'm gonna kill you, basically. And the Doctor's like, fair enough. But this Beacon, he doesn't care. He discovers, and he pretends that the Doctor still knows it's Salamander, but then he is basically like, yeah, whatever. I just love it. He's just such a bastard. And then when later on in the story, this general guy's talking to him, and it's like, you were a real cruel child back, and he was like, oh yes, I was the bully, but I had a wonderful childhood. And that basically suits his character. He is the bully. He's the character who just loves inflicting pain and misery on others. So, despite the fact he's not even like the main villain, he's like the henchman. But my God, it is so cool. Now, before I continue, spoiler warning, because this is a big part of later on in the story, so you have been warned. So it turns out that Salamander is he's got like an underground bunker with a group of people who believe that basically there's been a war up on the surface, and only Salamander can go in there because he has a bit stronger resistance to nuclear waste. And Salamander basically tells these people to make an earthquake there, or a volcano explode there, to try and take down the enemy in the war. And so, yeah, that's just a brilliant concept for this villain. And I love how they're all good characters, and they believe that this guy is a saint, going up there getting food for them and stuff. And I love the interactions between them, because he does genuinely seem like he cares about these people. He just manipulates them. And you got the scenes where he's basically is like, you, my trusted friend, remember you three, when this started, you were just kids, and now look at you, you're grown-ups. So, it's very sweet to love it, but my God, that's just a messed up concept. He's basically kept these people prisoner without them even knowing about it, and told them that they can't go to the service because otherwise they'll die. So, yeah, it's just, I don't think this video's not doing it justice. Just go watch it. 6 parts long, but I guarantee you're going to have a great time. And so, in the last episode, we have one of the characters basically discovering a newspaper that says like a holiday. So he basically realizes that Salamander's been lying to him, and then he takes him up to the service and then whacks him in the back of the head, and then Salamander basically sets like a Salamander meets up with that guy that was helping the Doctor to find evidence. And it turns out that he and Salamander were actually working together on this project of kidnapping these people, keeping them under there thinking that there's a war going on, and using it to make natural disasters. However, Salamander betrayed him and basically discredited him, and he had no access until this part of the story to take advantage of it. And later on then he pulls the trigger down that destroys the earthquake, and it's, you know, it's just something, I just love that concept. But anyway, so he dies, but Salamander, he survives, and Jamie, he believes that he was the Doctor, and so he takes him to the TARDIS, and the way it's shot here is very bizarre and very strange, and you get the fantastic scene of he goes into the TARDIS, and then Jamie's like, oh, do you want me to control the buttons? And then he nods, he's like, but Doctor, you said that we should never touch the buttons. And then you hear the voice in the background. You're right, Jamie. They turn around, there's the Doctor there in his costume. This is the first time that they've met in the story, and they have like a one-on-one fight with the same actor playing these two villains. So yeah, it's just, and these scenes are very well shot. You don't I mean, obviously it's like a double, when it cuts to like one, the other one is a double from behind. But it's shot so quick, but not too quick that it's disorientating, but it's quick enough that you don't realise it really quickly. And then you've got a split screen shot of Doctor there and Salamander on there, and he's like, I'm going to kill you now. And that's just an iconic shot. That's one of like the biggest images from the story, is that bit when they're in the TARDIS and you see the Patrick Troughton basically looking at Patrick Troughton. However, there's a massive problem with the story, and this happens right at the end. There is no resolution. What do I mean by that? Well, basically the Doctor accidentally presses some buttons, or Salamander presses buttons, I can't remember. And the TARDIS basically flips forward, and Salamander falls out of the TARDIS into the time vortex, which is the first time you see like a person in the time vortex. So that's really cool. Now, the implication is that he dies, but we'll, as we see later on, he survives. But that's how it ends. We don't find out how, if the Doctor basically recovers. It leaves it on a cliffhanger. Did any of those people find out that Salamander was the bad guy after all? Did those people in the cave survive? Did they get him out? Don't know. It just kind of, for a story that's been brilliantly paced up to this point, it just ends abruptly. When, like, literally, you just see him falling, and then the credits roll, and it really feels like there's an episode missing of the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria meeting with everybody else, and it's like, right, you guys look after yourselves now, and he's been exposed, and now he's been shown as the true villain, and these people, they're out of the world now, and they're safe. No, we don't get any of that. It just ends on a cliffhanger that really feels like there should have been another episode, which is a huge complaint, because you're watching it and you're like, oh, okay, I can't wait for the next episode. But no, it leads straight into the Web of Fear. So there you go. That's the enemy. That's the enemy of the world. Surprisingly, it is absolutely fantastic, and we are so grateful that we can watch it now and appreciate how great it was. And it's really, you watch it and it's really hard to imagine that this didn't do so well on its first showing. Just something about it feels like it should be played in a cinema. Barry Lett's Doctor Who directorial debut is just phenomenal, and I'm so glad he would go on to produce the Third Doctor era. Ina Lloyd's final story as producer, fantastic. A great way to end his legacy. And David Whittaker bringing out, probably, in my opinion, his best script by far. This is probably easily my favourite David Whittaker script. Now, before I finish it, I just want to say that Barry Letts actually said he was really disappointed with this story, the story itself was saying, and he said that he felt like, as a director, he was trying to show off too much. I think that's a load of rubbish. I think he did a fantastic job. So there you go, that's The Enemy of the World. So join me next time where we will have a Doctor Who Marathon double feature. What? Yes. So join me next time where we meet up against the Doctor's enemy, the Great Intelligence Returns, and the Robot Yetis. Join me next time in The Web of Fear and a bonus story, The Web of Time, a big famous audio drama of the River Song Diary. So I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon.